currently speaking to your audience? How are you currently making them show up for themselves before they even get to working with you? Welcome back to Higher Self and I. Today we're talking about a topic that has been so popular on the podcast. I talked about higher caliber of clients a while back, and it's been one of the most downloaded podcasts in the last 90 days. And I thought, why not let's speak into it a little bit more, because it is something that I really shifted within the business that helped me really truly step into the clients that I wanted to serve. And I know sometimes when I say the phrase higher caliber clients, the first thought that you go to is a higher ticketed price, like more of an investment. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about the type of client that I want in my container. So it doesn't always have to be you putting your prices up. I know that's something that I work with my clients. A lot of my clients come in, we shift their message to speak to that higher caliber of client, and they perhaps put up their prices. But sometimes it can come down to genuinely the type of client that you want to attract. Now, I talk to my higher caliber clients, and this is how it moves my audience. And I really want to talk about that today. That is the kind of scope of the podcast, because when I speak to that higher caliber of client, it makes my audience move. It makes them move into it. And there's a big difference between posting content to sign clients and posting content so you sign high paying or high caliber dreamy clients who are really, really excited to invest in you. It's coming from a completely different mindset. It's coming from a completely different energy than them coming in from that scarcity energy. We know we've been there. I know you've worked with clients who maybe have felt like they solely are relying on you to solve every freaking problem in their business or their life or their health or whoever you are and whoever you're coaching. We know those type of clients who think that you are going to be the one that solves everything. And we know that that's not always the case, because we know as providers, service providers, coaches, whoever you are, we can do the work, but equally the client has to meet us as well. We're not here to do everything for them. We need them to do that too. And I think in a world, I don't want you to settle for anything less. I don't want you to settle for anything less than the perfect, incredible clients that you want to call in. And maybe right now you're going through that transition period where you are ready to step into a higher caliber of client, whether that's from like an actions and an energy perspective or from a monetary perspective. Like I said, it can be both within this. It doesn't have to be that you put up your prices, but I know that that's kind of where people go. And it's not always been like this for me. And that's what I wanted to speak into today, because when I post content, I am very, very intentional with who I'm speaking to. And as a result of that, because I am intentional with who I'm speaking to, as a result of that, the clients I attract and the clients that come into my container and inside my programs and inside my membership always match. They always match. And that for me makes my job a whole lot happier because I have had my fair share of what the industry calls nightmare clients. Now, I'm not going to call them that today, but I've had my fair share of unaligned clients. And I know how it feels for me from an energetic point of view, especially in Voxer, especially coaching them, whether it's on calls, and I know that they're not doing the work. I know that they're not putting the time in. I know that they're maybe not listening to the tracks that I know are going to help them. I know that they're thinking that I'm going to solve every single one of their problems. I used to get this in the weight loss industry more than I do in the coaching industry now, because I was the last resort for people when I was doing weight loss for hypnotherapy for weight loss, which is where I started, where I begun with my niche many, many years ago. I was the last resort, which meant that they were really relying on me to change their life. And not only does it put this insane amount of pressure on you as a provider, it also means that they think that you're going to be the one that solves everything. So they put all the eggs in your basket, and then they don't show up for themselves, and you are to blame. And I actually moved out of the weight loss industry because I was constantly the one that was being blamed. And I knew that I was doing my half, like we speak about the universe. I'll do my half, and universe, you meet me halfway. And that was happening with that type of client. They were coming in thinking that I was going to solve everything, and it's such an energy drain. Like, I remember like how tired and frustrated I used to get, because I was like, I know you can do this, but you're not listening to me, and you're not following through on what you say, and you're not doing your action steps, and you're potentially not doing your homework, or whatever we call it. I can only do my half of it. I can't be there watching what you're eating every night. I can't be there stopping you from putting that seventh chocolate bar of the day into your mouth. Like, that's not what you're paying me for. And actually, that's what my reality was for a long time. To be honest, even when I moved into the coaching world, and I went straight into like talking about visibility, and I did a lot of work around visibility, and I had Visibility Queen, and I was attracting a type of client who had just started in their business, which can still be dreamy clients, by the way. They can still be very dreamy clients, even when you're just starting out. But because I was speaking to the lack of confidence, and the lack of confidence on stories, I was attracting a lot of people who were stuck and they weren't willing to move. So really having a look at what that looks like was a real eye-opener for me when I was really starting to reflect before I did this podcast episode. And I had to push so hard to make sales around that time when I was attracting that type of client. The push of sales felt so difficult because they needed so much what's the word, convincing. They needed so much convincing that I was going to be the one, because they didn't trust themselves, and they didn't trust themselves to make this investment, or they didn't believe in themselves that things were going to change. We had the works, everyone. We had the works. So I wanted to speak to today how you can start to talk to that higher caliber of client, and how that's going to move your audience with or without. Because I know right now you're potentially scared, right? You want to level up, but you're scared that your followers aren't ready to go with you. I get this a lot with my one-to-one clients. They're like, I really want to speak to this person, but I'm not sure this person's even in my audience. And you want to step into that higher caliber of client, but you're almost a little bit scared that your authority doesn't match, or can I actually serve at that level? Can I show up as the coach at that level? So we're going to go through it all today, that is for sure. So when we look at really talking to that higher caliber of client, there is a lot of belief and trust that comes in it from you, because people are going to be led by you from your content, from how you speak to them, from how you address them. So for instance, I talk about this a lot. I create business in three levels. I have 3 levels of clients. A lot of the time I am speaking to my level 3 client. And that doesn't mean that my level 1 client doesn't resonate. In fact, they really resonate because it really moves them into thinking and feeling and behaving and acting like my level 3 client. And actually, what I find is they start to move quicker behind the scenes without me seeing, without me knowing. They start to move quicker into the client that they desire to be, because my level 1s want to be where my level 2s are, my level 2s want to be where my level 3s are, and so on. And this comes back to how you're actually speaking to them. A lot of the time I see people staying in their comfort zone of the client that they've always spoke to. I was definitely here too, especially when I was doing the transition from the content visibility scene into Rebecca 2.0. And I kept falling back into that old way of speaking to clients, into that old type of client that I used to work with and used to attract. And it really felt uncomfortable for me to speak to that higher caliber of client, the client that I actually wanted in. And there was a couple of things that I did. One of them was really naming the behaviors that I wanted them to show up in. And one of those that I use all the time is action taker. I love working with action takers because things happen quicker. You know, if we have a one-to-one where we've done something and we've talked about something and then they go away and they're like, Beck, I've done that. I'm like, woohoo, you're my type of client, baby. All of my clients currently work in that way because I've attracted the fact that I work with action takers. And I use this in my messaging in that repetition so much. Don't be scared of repetition. So much so that one of my gorgeous one-to-ones, before we worked together, she actually messaged me and she said, hey, Beck, I really want to work with you one-to-one. And I know that you only work with action takers. Right now, I've got a current life situation that I'm going through, which means that I couldn't take the action in the way that I know you like your clients to take the action. So with this being said, can we start at a later date? Now, how incredible is that that client knew and understood that the way you work with me is being fully in and taking the action. So much so that she had understood that herself. We hadn't even had a conversation at this point. She'd understood that herself so much that she knew that now wasn't the right time, because she wanted to be committed. She was the exact client I was looking for, but because of the life situations that she had at the time, meant that she wouldn't be able to take the action right there. And we started 2 months later, and by God, she took the frickin' action. So she almost diagnosed herself through my content to be like, wow, okay, Beck works with action takers. Okay, that's what I really need to step into if I want to work with her. That's how that's how she wants people to show up within her containers. Now, that's not me saying that, that's not me being bossy or me being like, I only work with action takers, but I know that things happen, big shifts happen, money happens, clients come in when people take the action. The other thing that I constantly talk about, which is paired with the action taking, is self-awareness. My clients get incredible results, and the clients that do get incredible results with me are the clients who are unbelievably self-aware. Unbelievably self-aware. And that's why they have such big breakthroughs time after time, like quantum leaps within my one-to-one, because the self-awareness is there, which one means that they call themselves out. Two, it means that I can call them out and they're okay with that, because sometimes we need that. That's, as a coach, I can see more than what you can see in the bubble that you're in. I can see it from an outside perspective, which means that I can see the patterns. I can see the templates that you're currently playing from, which means that I can call you out within that. And it just means that they move through beliefs so much quicker. Because when you are self-aware, when you're like, oh, that's okay, I'm doing that, And I think I know why. Straight into Voxer with me, we work through it, it's gone. Every time that pattern comes back up, they're self-aware enough. They're self-aware enough to call themselves out, or I call them out and we move through it. So there's a couple of characteristics, as we say, characteristics that I love my one-to-one clients to have. And the reason why I love that is because, one, people get ROI with me, they get return on investment. And two, it makes my job in the way of a coach and seeing the changes and being open to the changes, it makes my job so much more enjoyable. Not easier, because I'm constantly stretched as a coach with my one-to-ones, and I freaking love that. I want to be stretched as a coach. I want to experience different beliefs and different patterns and different templates that I can work in and try and resolve and, bust those beliefs. But it makes it so much more enjoyable for me and for the client. So when I speak to that higher caliber of client, not only am I speaking to the characteristics that I want them to have and how they show up, but equally then they can match it before they get into the process with me. I don't have to have this huge, big onboarding system where I have to tell them how it's going to work and what it like. I don't have to have all of that because I've already spoken to that and what that looks like for them. So I want you to have a little think. How are you currently speaking to your audience? How are you currently making them show up for themselves before they even get to working with you? How are you making them move? You can make people move through your content alone. I know that there is so many people who have been watching and listening to me for years, and they've moved so far without even working with me one-to-one. So I can create that within my content because I consciously choose how I want to speak to those higher caliber of clients and who that is. Clients who come to me with solution-based problems. That's another type of client I love working with and something that I speak to all the time. So really understanding the characteristics of your client from an energetic point of view, but then equally mapping that out to them in your content. How are you speaking to that? How are you actually showing that you do that? I like my clients to take the action, but if I ain't taking the action, then I'm not aligned. So I take the action. I'm insanely self-aware. I go to my coach with solution-based problems. So I kind of play out the energetics and the behaviors that I want my clients to come into my containers with. So there's a lot going on here from a strategic point of view and from a subconscious mindset point of view. And it's really, really important because before I felt really frustrated that my followers didn't move and take the action the way that I wanted to, or in the same way as I did. I was constantly craving those more aligned clients who saw the value of my work, who wanted in, who would make the investment knowing that they would make ROI, but equally not kind of saying yes and then being like, oh God, if it doesn't happen, I'm going to blame her. There's lots around this, and it's really is the kind of embodiment piece around that as you show it, as you really step into it. So let's kind of break it down. Who do you want to be speaking to? And I know I spoke about this a little bit in the podcast before. So really getting clear on who it is that you want to call in and how you want them to show up for the container. We've already done that part. We did that part in the last podcast, which I'll tag below. But now we need to have a look at, okay, how do we actually speak to that online? How do we actually speak into that through your content, through your messaging, and most importantly, through your positioning? Because you need to position yourself in a way that allows your clients, your ideal clients, to understand what it is, how they show up, and what that looks like for you. So it could be a phrase or words that you use that kind of funnel the people down. For instance, I constantly use aspiring multi six figure CEO because it filters the people in that are like, oh, I'm an aspiring multi six figure CEO. I constantly use powerhouse. I love, hey, action taker. I really spell out the person that I want within my container through my content, through my stories. And equally, I show that I do that too through my stories, through my YouTube. I know some of you are watching my vlogs at the moment. I'll tag a couple below because I love doing them. But really kind of stepping into that, you're going to have to name it. You're going to have to show them, but equally, you're going to have to educate them on what that is. You know, what I usually say is most of my clients are this. Most of my clients are action takers, and that's why we get the results. A lot of my clients do this within the container, and I love that. Or you really spell it out for your audience to understand, to see what type of client, what type of characteristics you currently work with. You'll immediately start to shift into that, and you'll immediately start to attract that if you speak into that. And it comes from coming out of your comfort zone. It really took me a while to step out of my comfort zone in that, because it felt very easy to speak to the type of client that I've been attracting. And I did have that feeling of like, oh God, like this feels scary. But right now, if Voxer feels like a chore to you, if client calls are becoming a burden, if your work feels repetitive and you are like, I'm giving so much and I'm getting nothing in return, whether that's energy, whether that's money, whatever that is, it's time to step into that higher caliber of client. And that comes from you understanding who they are, how you show up for them, how they show up for you. But then, next step, naming it within your content. So I hope this has given you something to think about today. If you have any questions, like I said, my DMs are always open, and wink, wink, nudge, nudge, keep an eye open because there's something very, very exciting coming. And I'll see you on the next episode. Mwah!